Hi, I'm recording my vlog to go along with my prior knowledge interview paper, and I just wanted to share a few things with you in regards to my prior knowledge interview. As a part of my methodology, by conducting interviews with two students, I could better understand the general prior knowledge of students. I used 10 pictures as part of my interview, and I used the images to test students' knowledge, to find out what they know and if they can put things in order, chronological order, and when they see an image, how they connect that to what they've learned in history classes before. This is really interesting and helpful because it got me thinking about what they know and also how they decode things based on images. The two participants I chose were two 8th grade students that live in the same community but attend different middle schools, and one was a boy and one was a girl, and I showed them the same 10 pictures and asked them the same 22 questions. Some insights I found interesting were, through my interview, I discovered that the students do not have a thorough understanding of women's history. The evidence I found to support this is that the participants were asked the question, who are the three most historically significant women in history, and both could only come up with two, and both named Susan B. Anthony, which related back to an earlier image I showed them of women's suffrage.
Yeah, we can do it.
I think this problem is twofold because teachers are not teaching about it as frequently because they can't, because it's less likely to be written in history that about women's history because they do not write the history, and also this goes into teachers are trying to teach the test, and if women aren't in history, the basic history that they need to know for the test, then they're not going to be taught this history. Another insight I gathered was that students do not question the historical accuracy of things they watch outside of school. I made this conclusion by asking students, did they wonder if a film that they watched outside of school was historically accurate? But students responded that they did not question the accuracy of the movie because they assumed it was based on fact, because they were shown actual movie footage or images from the time period. Neither of them felt a desire to look up whether or not information was actually true. They just took it at face value because it looked good enough for them. Students will most likely take information they watch or read this way because of the old movies or pictures. The third insight I discovered from doing these interviews is that students do not have a good idea of what a primary or secondary source means. When I asked both these students what a primary source and secondary source are, one responded that he wasn't really sure what a primary source was, something about first person, but he didn't know what a secondary source was, and the girl did not know what either of them were. And I think teachers aren't stressing these enough, and to me it also means that teachers are not using them enough in their teaching, which is not a good thing in my mind. So those were three of the major insights that I found from doing these interviews. So I'm going to share with you a strategy that I think is very valuable for each of the insights that I came up with. A strategy that I think it would be helpful with regards to teaching students more women's history is having students participate in activities that have women as the main focus of the main actor of the lesson. One great example of this can be found in the book Reading Like a Historian, in which there's a lesson called Did Pocahontas Rescue John Smith? I like this activity because it helps students look at primary sources and analyze data and answer questions, but in a way that has a woman as the main actor performing the actions. I think this activity would be great for both male and female students because it would pique their interest because of who's being discussed. Everyone knows Pocahontas and John Smith. This type of activity would be one way to help students remember women in history more readily. Another strategy that I came up with to combat my insight that students do not question accuracy would be to kind of force them to question accuracy and things they don't really know, things that they know about, but to make them question things more. It's important that students go beyond the classroom into their everyday life to have these questioning skills, because it's just not about history, it's about their future, and questioning and knowing what questions to ask are important parts of life. An activity that I had that I found why won't teachers tell us the answers allows students to practice their questioning skills by looking at the text, the context of the information, and the subtext. Through this lesson about the Progressive Era and the Panama Canal, students must distinguish among lies, half-truths, and exaggerations using primary sources. This lesson would be a great way for students to practice questioning. Also, it is made more historically meaningful for students when they work with primary sources. As a teacher, a final insight I had with regards to, or final strategy I had with regards to my prior knowledge interview insight, is that to me it's most important that they understand what a primary and secondary source is, because they use them. As a teacher, I will explain to my students what a primary and secondary source is, what each of those are, and then I will reinforce this knowledge with many activities using them. A strategy to help students gain a concept of primary sources is to use political cartoons. They can be especially helpful when thinking about how to reach diverse learners. Rees and Thornton discussed this in their book, Teaching Social Studies to English Language Learners. They argue political cartoons are an excellent way to reach ELL students because things are exaggerated and focused on one topic. They suggest pairing an ELL student with an English speaker so that they work together. Working with cartoons helps ELL students because there are a few words that they have to comprehend and work with, but still get practice working with primary sources and handling those primary sources and making history real to them, not just something in the past. Then students, in this activity, students would then make their own cartoon related to a topic being studied. And that's another way that they get to handle the material and remember the events, but also remember the sources and what happened in these cartoons and why they were significant. Once the meaning is discovered, students can activate the prior knowledge of the subject and hopefully become further invested in the topic. The conclusion of my paper is really that I gathered a lot of insights from doing this interview, but I can only share very few of them. But I'm glad that I got to interview the students I did, because I do want to teach middle school, and it was interesting to get their perspective on these American history topics after completing an American history course last year. I expected many of the responses that the participants gave, but it did help me to understand the importance of the teacher and whether or not students like a subject or succeed at it. This is important for me to remember as I move forward, because the impact my disposition has on student achievement is so great that I want students in my class to be as successful as possible. Having students participate in fun and engaging activities with primary sources are great for student involvement. When students become invested in the material, it's more likely that they will retain and create long-term interest in the topic. Final conclusion I made from my future teaching practices is that images truly do stick with students. Both participants got almost all 10 pictures placed in the right order, even when they did not know that much about the time period. They could still tell when it was based, what time period the picture was based in, by the clues given in the photographs. To me, this means that I need to use a lot of visually stimulating material in my classroom, because that is a major way that students activate their prior knowledge. And I think that prior knowledge interview activity was extremely beneficial because it helped me to better get inside the brains of the students that I will be teaching in the future. So that was my prior knowledge interview.